Is Raila Odinga a government project? There are those who are very sure that he is. After all, he has full government backing. He has the full backing of this administration. Indeed, President Uhuru Kenyatta has many times very clearly implied that Raila Odinga is his choice. Yeah? He has just fallen short of saying Raila Tosha. He has not yet said that. But everything else he has done, his body language, his moves, all of them scream Raila Tosha. So isn't this clear evidence that indeed Raila Odinga is a government project? In this video, I believe I conclusively answer that question. But even more important is the question, assuming that Raila Odinga is a government project, does it mean that he will fail? Like the most famous previous government project failed in 2002, when all powerful, under the old constitution, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi picked Uhuru Kenyatta as his preferred successor. So does it mean that Raila will fail the way Uhuru Kenyatta failed in 2002? Those are very important political questions that every Kenyan needs to answer, at least those Kenyans interested in predicting at an early date who the fifth president of Kenya is going to be. Yeah, those are critical questions to answer. And they are fully and conclusively answered in this particular video. It is very eye-opening in my view. Karibu sana and enjoy. COTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli was on the Jeff Koinange show on Mashujaa Day. And indeed the question we're asking today, Atwoli himself brought it up and answered it. But before we come to Atwoli's very emotional and emphatic answer, and try to understand it, let us look at some projects, government projects of the past. In fact, let's refine the term and call it an administration's project, because that is precisely what it is. And let us start with an administration's project that was successful. The person actually got elected. I believe this will help us understand just how powerful an administration's project can be. Because the perception we have in Kenya is that if somebody is a government project, if somebody is an administration's project, then they're doomed to failure. There is no way they'll get elected. But that's not true. There is absolutely no doubt that President Ronald Reagan in the United States was one of the most popular presidents ever of that nation. You know, many times in politics, the circumstances and everything about you and about your administration and about the times all conspire to make you a spectacular failure. including your decisions or the decisions of your administration. They all conspire together to make you a very spectacular failure. And a very good example of that is President Ronald Reagan's predecessor, a man called President Jimmy Carter. Even an attempt to rescue hostages conspires against you as a president and fails in a very spectacular manner. Now the soldiers are the same, the intelligence community is the same, the CIA is the same, every government organ is the same. But under you, they fail. And that just adds fuel to the fire of your failure as a president. And at other instances, I must admit, very rare instances, the same factors conspire, to make you such a huge success that people even start thinking of wanting to change the constitution to extend your term as president. They don't want to see you go. Indeed, the vast majority of voters start getting very worried about what their life will look like after you're gone. They start dreading that day when your people will pack up their bags and vacate the state house of your country, in this case the White House. And I believe it was this factor, that got some very smart handlers of President Ronald Reagan to come up with a project that, amongst many other things, would reassure the people, calm the nerves of many, that after you're gone from office, things will still be very okay. And of course, the Ronald Reagan's administration's project was George Bush Sr. And I believe if America was Kenya, George Bush Sr.'s slogan would have been Nane Tena. 8 more years of a booming economy, of a great America, of things going so well for the nation called America. Let's face it, it's no small matter when the government administration, with all its powers and with all its instruments of power, back you for the presidency. It's not a small matter. It's a huge advantage. And that is the naked truth. And we know what happened. George Bush Sr. swept into power with the momentum of some of the hurricanes that usually hit the nation called America. Now that example sets the stage perfectly for us to analyze what happened with the Kenyan project in the year 2002. Or rather, what went wrong with it. Now, incidentally, there's a very fascinating aside that I want to share with you concerning this time in Kenyan politics. This was the period when I was about to go into my last sessions, my last very important key sessions. This was the period when I was about to come into my own under my political lecturer and his political lectures. I was finally starting to get it and to understand what politics is all about. And I made a prediction. Long before Moi, the late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, made it very clear to Kenyans who his preferred successor was going to be. And I told a group of my friends at the time that the next president of Kenya, President Moi's preferred successor, was going to be Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Of course, the part of my prediction that was wrong was where I said, this man is going to be the next president. Because the power of the KANU government, the KANU administration, the Moi Professor of Politics administration, that power, including the deep state at the time, would sweep that candidate into the presidency. I got that part of my prediction wrong. But let's focus on the part where I was right. No, there's a good reason for it, yeah? It's not selfish. My friends looked at me as if I'd gone completely mad. Chris, there is Professor George Saitoti. There is Kalonzo Musyoka. There are 1,000,001 other people around Moi who we are sure Moi is going to pick. How can he pick somebody who is so new in politics? How will this person control these other KANU bigwigs? These other experienced, seasoned politicians? It doesn't make sense. Chris, wewe mambo ya siasa hujui. Ingekuwa poa kama ungenyamaza tu. Well, you know what happened. About 6 months later, Moi announced in a very clear voice and in the local Kiswahili language that his pick was Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, about 2 months before the general elections, one of those friends had made a prediction too. Yeah, these guys didn't miss much. Came to me with a document produced by a think tank. And in that document, they were discussing the reason why Moi had no choice but to pick Uhuru Kenyatta as his preferred successor. I read through that analysis, and as I finished, my friends gathered around me and they told me, Chris, please be honest. You must have read this document. You must have read this document. And then you came here with your prediction. And I looked up at them and honestly told them, no, I've never seen this document. They never believed me. And wherever they are today, I am very sure they still don't believe me. And they will never believe me. Anyway, my analysis at the time that brought me to that conclusion was based on my gut feeling. Yeah, and my very keen observation of Moi's moves at that particular time. And my God-given instincts. Yeah, the same tools I use today on this channel. And my point in telling that story is that it was at that particular point in my life that I realized I had something inside me about doing political analysis. And it had a lot to do with the long political lectures over many years since I was very young that I had had the privilege of receiving from my political lecturer. But more so, it had something to do with something that had been put inside me, deep inside me, even before I was born. And at the time I made the mistake of ignoring it all. My strong advice to you is that when this happens in your life, because it will, it happens, I believe, in the life of every human, never ignore such things. Yeah, they've been put into you for a reason that has to do with your destiny. The reason why you're born. The reason why God Almighty programmed you in that manner and put you on this earth. Don't make the same mistake I made. Yeah, because it can get very rough. You will be punished. You will suffer. Yeah, because you're ignoring the path that has already been chosen for you. But let's get back on course. That's important. Let's get back on course. And let's do so with a question. Why did Moi's project fail? I'm going to answer that question with one single word. and it's a very short word. And that word is Raila. Raila was in the Moi administration at the time. Yeah. KANU had merged with Raila's NDP to form what was called the new KANU at that time. Indeed, at the time, Raila Odinga was the Secretary General of KANU, Mama na Baba. You see, everybody knew that Moi was serving his last term. And in the last 2 or 3 years of Moi's last administration, there were quite a number of KANU bigwigs plotting furiously on how they were going to be the next president of Kenya after Moi. These campaigns to succeed Moi were intense. They were chini ya maji, of course. Yeah, they were not very public. You couldn't misbehave in the days of Moi, yeah, no matter how powerful you thought you were. But to give younger Kenyans a clear picture, imagine about a dozen William Samoei Rutos, yeah, campaigning to take over the presidency 3 years before the elections. Yeah, and they're all doing it under the water, as we put it in Kenya. Very under the radar, but very intense. It was crazy. And I'll give you the names of the frontrunners at the time. Nicholas Kipiator Biwott, George Saitoti, who was then the vice president, and of course in pole position to succeed Moi, or so it seemed. Kalonzo Musyoka, who was then the minister for foreign affairs, and he was going all over the Rift Valley, telling Kalenjins, now that your man Moi is going, I am the president under whom you will be safest. Yeah, so please campaign for me. Make sure I become president and everything will be okay for you guys. And this last name is going to shock you. And of course, the other person furiously campaigning chini ya maji was Raila Amolo Odinga, who, as I've said, was deep in KANU at the time and was the first person to realize that Moi was up to something that would frustrate them all. Yeah? And therefore he started making his own plans very early, while still inside KANU. And according to my analysis, that was the main reason why the powerful project of the Moi government failed. You see, the most significant move Raila made was to organize an alternative for all those in KANU who would be frustrated by Moi's choice. And the name of that alternative was LDP, a party called LDP. And that LDP, where many KANU bigwigs got a soft landing, later merged with the opposition parties which had already merged, parties belonging to Mwai Kibaki, Democratic Party, a party belonging to Michael Kijana Wamalwa called Ford Kenya, and a party belonging to the first woman to run for the presidency in Kenya, Charity Kaluki Ngilu, called Social Democratic Party. Those three parties had already formed a very firm alliance, ready for the general election. And at the last minute, Raila Odinga's LDP, packed with very experienced hands from KANU, merged with that opposition union. Game short. Oh, and I omitted to mention another name of another person who was plotting to be president at the tail end of Moi's last administration, a man called Simeon Nyachai, who, after Raila said Kibaki tosha, fled from this union and formed his own political party called Ford People, and of course vied for the presidency. But this political juggernaut, instigated by Raila Odinga, was just too much for the government project. And it failed. Now fast forward to the present. And let us remind ourselves, history always repeats itself. This time round, the Raila of the current administration that has already broken off to prepare themselves to take over the presidency is, of course, William Samoei Ruto. And the juggernaut behind him, the political juggernaut, is endless streams of cash, a war chest that seems impossible to exhaust. And of course, the old Kanu tactics, very effective. But what Ruto does not have around him, that Raila had around him in 2002, is a long list of old hands, experienced politicians, powerful, influential politicians, all around him. That Ruto does not have, but Raila had in 2002. What that means, and this should be obvious, is that if indeed Raila Odinga is a government project, the administration's project, his chances of success are much higher than those of Uhuru Kenyatta in 2002. For many reasons, but the chief reason is that he does not have the same powerful juggernaut working against him. Instead, he has a very powerful juggernaut working towards his success to take over as president. And so the truth is, in case Raila Odinga is a government project, I'm not saying he is, but in case he is, his chances of success are obviously much higher than those of Uhuru Kenyatta in 2002. And that is a fact. But let us tackle that question now. Is Raila Odinga indeed this administration's project? After all, the government is backing him. He has government machinery fully behind him. And his campaigns, that is the truth. However, there is one huge difference that casts a lot of doubt to anybody who may want to call Raila a project. Because, sincerely speaking, a project is something you pick up from nowhere. Something that has no momentum of its own. Indeed, a project is something that you can pick up and then change your mind later and drop, and nothing will happen. The moment you drop that project, it cannot rise up on its own and continue functioning. It's done, finished, finito, kwisha maneno. Essentially, that is what a project is. That is what George Bush Sr. was when the Ronald Reagan administration decided to pick him up as a project and to promote him. And they did so successfully. Unfortunately, for those who want to call Raila a project, no matter how you look at this, from whatever angle you want to examine it, this man called Agwambo can never qualify to be called a project. Simply because this man is already an institution. And so, in my view, and indeed in the view of many, what is more accurate to say, if you want to link Raila to the current administration, is to say the government has picked an institution and the decision has been made to work with that institution. COTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli put it very bluntly and in my view very clearly and very well when he told Jeff Koinange on Mashujaa Day, and please allow me to paraphrase, Ati Raila Odinga government project. How? Maybe what you want to say is that the government is Raila's project. Raila can never be the project of anybody. This a man went into politics when he was 14 years old. At the Raila project. How now? Now, I'm well aware of the fact that what I have just said, what Atwoli said, will have minimal impact on younger Kenyans who don't understand and will never understand. But I have a video on this channel that will help many who may not understand to see a few things they may not be able to see right now. Do you know that there are so many supporters of Raila Odinga who believe that the man has magical powers that is able to see ahead into the future and through people? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he has. But just check out that video. I highly recommend this video to die-hard DP Ruto supporters. Because in any battle, it is extremely important to understand your opponent. You can't just rubbish your opponent and expect to win. No. They'll blindside you because you have no idea how they operate. I believe there's a link on the top right-hand corner of your screen right now and repeated in the description area below. And very naively, you have no interest in finding out how they operate. How do you go into a battle like that? Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.